Hearts Beyond Empires, Episode 1, The Collision. The story of how a man who had everything discovered he had nothing at all, until one fateful night in Monaco changed everything. The Alexander Cross stood on the terrace of the Hotel de Paris, a glass of Dom Perignon in his hand that he hadn't touched in 20 minutes. Below him, the Mediterranean stretched out like a dark mirror, reflecting the lights of Monaco's harbor, where yachts worth more than small countries bobbed gently in the evening tide. He was 38 years old, worth $14 billion, and completely, utterly numb. The charity gala behind him was in full swing, Monaco's annual fundraiser for global humanitarian causes, where the world's wealthiest gathered to write checks that would make headlines and soothe consciences. Alexander had already pledged $5 million. It meant nothing to him, a rounding error in his quarterly earnings. "Mr. Cross," a voice called from inside, "they're about to announce the major donors." Alexander turned slowly, his handsome face, sharp jawline, dark eyes that had graced the covers of Forbes and Time, arranged in the practiced smile he'd perfected over a decade of being photographed. He was tall, impeccably dressed in a custom Tom Ford tuxedo that cost more than most people's cars, his dark hair touched with just enough gray at the temples to suggest gravitas rather than age. He had built Crosstech from nothing, literally nothing, from a crammed studio apartment in Detroit where he'd coded his first app, surviving on ramen and coffee, sleeping 3 hours a night, to this: penthouses in 5 cities, private jet, speaking engagements at Davos, presidents and prime ministers on speed dial. The American dream realized, the self-made billionaire, the man who had everything. Except Alexander couldn't remember the last time he'd felt anything. He moved through the ballroom like a shark through water, smooth, predatory, perfectly adapted to his environment. People parted for him, hands reached out to shake his, faces lit up when he approached. Everyone wanted something. Everyone always wanted something. "Alexander, darling!" Vivian Laurent, a French socialite whose family money went back to Napoleon, air-kissed both his cheeks. "You must sit at our table. Philippe is dying to discuss the merger." "Of course," Alexander said smoothly, meaning absolutely not. "Mr. Cross, a photo for Vanity Fair?" "Mr. Cross, my daughter just graduated from Stanford. She'd love to discuss opportunities at Crosstech." "Alexander, you remember my wife?" He navigated it all with the ease of long practice, his responses automatic, his mind elsewhere. Or rather, his mind nowhere at all, just the same comfortable numbness that had settled over him somewhere around his second billion, when he'd realized that achievement after achievement brought no satisfaction, only the need for the next achievement. His phone buzzed, his assistant, Rachel. "Board meeting moved to Tuesday, Singapore deal closing, Jakarta factory expansion approved." More empire, more money, more nothing. Alexander found himself back on the terrace, escaping the suffocating crowd. He loosened his bow tie, feeling the weight of his Patek Philippe watch on his wrist, $2.3 million, a gift to himself for his last birthday, that he'd forgotten he was wearing. "I need air," he muttered to himself, then almost laughed at the irony. He was standing on an open terrace overlooking the Mediterranean, and he couldn't breathe. Elena Rivera had exactly 47 euros in her wallet, a return bus ticket to Nice, and absolutely no business being at the most exclusive charity gala in Europe. But she was here anyway, because sometimes you had to crash the castle to meet the king. She stood in the hotel's powder room, staring at herself in the gilded mirror. Her dress was from a vintage shop in Barcelona, a simple black number that had cost her 30 euros but looked elegant enough if you didn't look too close at the slightly frayed hem. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun. No jewelry except the small silver cross her grandmother had given her before she died. She looked like she belonged here about as much as a sparrow belonged in a cage of peacocks. "You can do this, Elena," she whispered to her reflection. "These people have the money. Your kids need the water. Simple equation." Elena Rivera was 29 years old, director of Clean Horizons, a small nonprofit that built water purification systems in developing countries. She'd spent the last 6 years of her life in places most of these wealthy donors couldn't find on a map: villages in Kenya, communities in Bangladesh, settlements in Bolivia where children died from drinking contaminated water. She'd seen too many children die. So here she was, crashing a gala where the champagne cost more per bottle than her monthly salary, because she'd learned that the man who ran Crosstech, Alexander Cross, billionaire tech mogul, was one of the major donors tonight. And Crosstech had just announced a new water filtration technology that could change everything. If she could just get 5 minutes with him. 5 minutes to show him what his technology could do in the real world, not just in corporate presentations. 5 minutes to make him see the faces of the children who needed clean water. 5 minutes to make him care. Elena took a breath, squared her shoulders, and walked back into the ballroom with the confidence of someone who had nothing to lose, because she'd never had anything to begin with. The ballroom was overwhelming. Crystal chandeliers throwing rainbow light across marble floors. Women in dresses that cost more than Elena's annual budget. Men in tuxedos negotiating deals worth millions between sips of champagne. The air itself seemed to sparkle with wealth. Elena moved through the crowd like a ghost, searching. She'd studied his photo, Alexander Cross, dark hair, sharp features, usually unsmiling in press shots. Forbes called him the Ice King of Silicon Valley. TechCrunch said he had the Midas touch and the warmth of an algorithm. But he had $14 billion and a water filtration patent, so Elena didn't care if he was ice, fire, or stone. She just needed him to listen. She spotted him finally, standing alone on the terrace, his back to the party. Even from behind, he radiated power. The set of his shoulders, the casual way he held his champagne glass, the deference with which people avoided disturbing him. Elena's heart hammered. This was it. She walked toward the terrace, her cheap heels clicking on marble, clutching her worn leather portfolio that contained everything: photos of the villages, water quality reports, mortality statistics, budget projections. Her entire world in a 15-euro folder. She was 3 steps from the terrace door when someone grabbed her arm. "Excuse me, miss." A security guard, built like a wall, with an earpiece and a suspicious expression. "Can I see your invitation?" Elena's stomach dropped. I'm with the humanitarian delegation." "Name?" "Elena Rivera. I'm the director of Clean Horizons. We were invited to present." The guard was already speaking into his wrist mic. "We have an unregistered guest in the ballroom. Female, late 20s, possible crasher." "No, wait, please." Elena's face flushed hot. Around her, people were starting to notice, starting to stare. The kind of stares that said, "You don't belong here." "Miss, I'm going to have to ask you to come with me." "I just need 5 minutes." Elena's voice rose despite herself. "Just 5 minutes to speak with Mr. Cross about the water crisis and—" "Ma'am, please don't make a scene." But it was too late. Heads were turning, conversation stopping. The orchestra playing Mozart seemed suddenly too loud. Elena felt tears of frustration burning behind her eyes. She'd come so far, risked so much, and she was going to be thrown out like trash before she even— "Is there a problem here?" The voice was cool, commanding, with an undertone of steel that made the security guard immediately straighten. Alexander Cross had turned from the terrace and was now standing in the doorway, his dark eyes moving from the guard to Elena with the kind of sharp assessment that had made him billions in hostile boardrooms. "No problem, Mr. Cross," the guard said quickly. "Just an uninvited guest. We're handling it." "I see." Alexander's gaze settled on Elena, and she felt it like a physical weight. His eyes were darker than she'd expected from photos, colder, more empty, like looking into a well with no bottom. "And who are you?" Elena lifted her chin, refusing to be intimidated, even though her heart was racing and her palms were sweating, and she was about to be escorted out by security. "Elena Rivera," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Director of Clean Horizons, and I'm not a crasher. I'm someone who's trying to save children's lives while you people spend more on champagne than most villages see in a year." The words came out sharper than she'd intended. Around them, the silence deepened. Someone gasped. The security guard's hand tightened on her arm. But Alexander Cross's expression didn't change. He just studied her for a long moment, his head tilted slightly, like she was a particularly interesting algorithm he was trying to debug. "Let her go," he said quietly. The guard released her immediately. Alexander stepped closer, and Elena caught the scent of his cologne, something expensive and subtle that probably cost more than her rent. Up close, he was taller than she'd expected. his presence somehow both overwhelming and utterly controlled. "You have 5 minutes," he said. "Convince me why I should care." They stood on the terrace, the party continuing behind them like nothing had happened, though Elena could feel eyes watching through the glass doors. Alexander leaned against the balustrade, his posture relaxed, but his eyes sharp, assessing, waiting. Elena opened her portfolio with shaking hands, but not from fear now, from opportunity, from the chance she'd fought so hard for. "This is Amara," she said, pulling out a photograph of a little girl, maybe 6 years old, with huge brown eyes and a smile missing 2 front teeth. "She lives in a village outside Nairobi, smart as anything. She can recite multiplication tables and wants to be a doctor. Last year, she missed 3 months of school because she was sick from the water. The same water she has to walk 3 miles every morning to collect. The same water that's contaminated with E. coli and parasites and will probably kill her before she's 20. She laid out more photos. This is Kofi. This is Priya. This is Mateo. These are children who are dying from something as simple as dirty water. In 2025, while we stand here drinking champagne that costs more per glass than it would take to give their entire village clean water for a month." Alexander's expression hadn't changed, but his eyes had moved to the photographs. "Crosstech just patented a new filtration system," Elena continued, her voice gaining strength. "Portable, solar-powered, can purify 500 gallons a day. It's brilliant technology, but it's being marketed to luxury camping enthusiasts and disaster preppers in developed countries, people who don't need it, while children like Amara are dying because they don't have it." She pulled out her projections. "With a partnership and your manufacturing capacity, we could produce these units for $200 each. My organization could distribute them. We have the infrastructure, the relationships, the expertise. We just don't have the resources. You do." She looked up at him, and for the first time, Alexander Cross was actually looking at her, really looking. Not through her, not past her, but at her. "Why should I?" he asked, and there was something in his voice, not cruelty, but genuine curiosity. "I donate millions to charity every year. Why is your cause different than any other cause?" "Because it's not a cause," Elena said fiercely. "It's children, real children with names and faces and dreams. And because you have the power to save them, and if you don't, you're choosing to let them die. You can lie to yourself about it, call it market forces or priorities or whatever lets you sleep at night in your penthouse. But the truth is simple. You could save them, and you're choosing not to." She saw it then, a flicker of something in his eyes, anger maybe, or recognition. "You don't know anything about me," Alexander said, his voice low. "I know you grew up poor," Elena shot back, her research kicking in. "Detroit, single mother, worked 3 jobs to put yourself through community college before you got the scholarship to MIT. I know you built your first company in a studio apartment with nothing but talent and desperation. I know you understand what it's like to have nothing." His jaw tightened. "But I also know that somewhere between nothing and $14 billion, you forgot. You forgot what it's like to be Amara, walking 3 miles for poisoned water. You forgot what it's like to be desperate. You forgot what it's like to need help and have everyone who could help just look away." The silence between them was electric. "You don't know anything about me," Alexander repeated, but this time, his voice was different. Quieter, almost uncertain. "Then prove me wrong," Elena challenged. "Don't write a check to ease your conscience. Actually do something. Partner with us. Use your technology to save lives, instead of just making more money you don't need." Alexander stared at her, and Elena stared back, refusing to blink, refusing to back down, even though she was trembling and probably about to be thrown out, and had just insulted a billionaire to his face. "Your 5 minutes are up," Alexander said finally. Elena's heart sank. She'd failed. She'd gotten her shot, and she'd blown it by being too honest, too aggressive, too... "But I'll give you 5 more tomorrow," Alexander continued, pulling out his phone. "My office, New York, 2 p.m. Can you make it?" Elena blinked. Yes, I can make it." "Good." He typed something on his phone. "I'm sending you the address. Don't be late." He started to walk away, back toward the glittering party, back to his world of champagne and chandeliers and people who never challenged him. "Mr. Cross?" Elena called after him. He paused, looking back. "Why?" she asked. "Why are you giving me a chance?" Alexander was quiet for a moment, his dark eyes unreadable in the Monaco moonlight. "Because you're the first person in 10 years who's looked at me and seen someone who could do better," he said finally, "instead of someone to take advantage of." And then he was gone, disappearing back into the party, leaving Elena standing alone on the terrace with her worn portfolio and her racing heart, and the sudden, terrifying hope that maybe she'd actually gotten through. Alexander sat in the back of his Maybach, being driven back to his yacht in the harbor, and couldn't stop thinking about her eyes. Elena Rivera. He'd already pulled up everything about her on his phone. Limited social media presence, mostly photos of water projects and smiling children. Degree in environmental engineering from a state school in California. Worked for the UN for 2 years before starting Clean Horizons with what appeared to be grant money and prayers. Annual salary, $47,000. Net worth, probably negative given the student loans he could see mentioned in an old interview. She was nobody, nothing, a speck of dust in the world he moved through. So why couldn't he stop thinking about the way she'd looked at him? Not with awe or greed or calculation, but with disappointment. Like she'd expected better from him and he'd let her down. When was the last time anyone had expected anything from him except more money, more success, more empire? "The meeting tomorrow, sir?" His assistant Rachel's voice came through the car speakers. "Should I add Ms. Rivera to your calendar?" Alexander looked out the window at Monaco's glittering lights, at the wealth and luxury and emptiness of it all. "Yes," he said quietly. "And Rachel, pull all the data on our water filtration patent. Development costs, production capacity, potential applications in developing markets. I want a full analysis by morning." "Yes, sir. May I ask?" "No," Alexander said. Then softer, "I'm not sure yet myself." He ended the call and sat in silence as the car wound through Monaco's streets, thinking about a little girl named Amara who wanted to be a doctor, and a woman with fire in her eyes who'd crashed a billionaire's party because children were dying, and the way Elena Rivera had looked at him, like he was still human enough to care. You forgot what it's like to need help and have everyone who could help just look away. Had he? When had he become the person who looked away? Alexander stared at his reflection in the car window. Expensive suit, expensive watch, expensive everything. The man who had everything. And for the first time in years, he wondered if that woman with her worn portfolio and her passionate conviction was right. If maybe somewhere between nothing and $14 billion, he had forgotten something important. He had forgotten what it felt like to care about something more than the next deal, the next acquisition, the next billion. But standing on that terrace, being challenged by someone who didn't want his money or his influence or his power, who just wanted him to be better, Alexander had felt something flicker to life inside his chest, something he'd thought died years ago, something that felt dangerously close to hope. Meanwhile, Elena sat on the bus back to Nice, her head pressed against the window, her portfolio clutched to her chest, and she couldn't stop shaking. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. She'd gotten through to Alexander Cross, billionaire, ice king, the man who Forbes said negotiated like a machine and felt like one too. Or had she? Maybe tomorrow he'd cancel. Maybe this was just him being polite, and she'd show up at his office only to be turned away by some assistant with a polite explanation about scheduling conflicts. And no, Elena took a breath. She'd seen something in his eyes, just for a moment, when she talked about forgetting what it was like to be desperate. She'd seen something crack in that perfect, controlled facade. She'd seen a person underneath the billionaire. And maybe, just maybe, that person still remembered what it was like to care about something real. Elena looked at the photo of Amara she'd left out of her portfolio, the little girl's gap-toothed smile bright even in the dim bus lighting. "I'm going to save you," she whispered to the photo. "All of you, I promise." Outside the window, the Mediterranean coast rolled past in the darkness, And Elena Rivera, who had nothing but hope and determination, allowed herself to believe that
Elena felt like he was seeing straight through her, past her worn dress and her secondhand portfolio, past her desperation and her cause, to something deeper. It was unsettling and electric all at once. "I'll have my legal team draw up a partnership agreement," he said finally. "Crosstech will manufacture the units. You'll handle distribution and installation. 50-50 partnership on the project." Elena's nose scoffed. "Really? You'll do it?" "On one condition." Of course there was a condition. "What?" "I want to see it," Alexander said. "The actual work, not just reports and statistics. I want to go with you on the next installation, see what you do, how you do it. If I'm going to put my company's resources behind this, I need to understand it completely." Elena's mind raced. Having Alexander Cross in the field would be complicated. He'd slow them down, need special accommodations, probably complain about the conditions. But if it meant getting his full support. "When?" she asked. "I can clear my schedule next week. Where's your next project?" "Kenya," Elena said. "We're installing 3 systems in villages outside Nairobi. Basic infrastructure, challenging terrain. It's not glamorous, Mr. Cross. It's hard work in difficult conditions."
The Kenyan sun was merciless. Alexander had been in the country for 3 hours, and already his expensive moisture-wicking shirt was soaked through with sweat. The drive from Nairobi to the first village had taken them 2 hours on progressively deteriorating roads, until road became a generous description for the rutted dirt path their Land Rover bounced along. Elena sat beside him, completely at ease despite the heat and the dust and the bone-jarring ride. She was in her element, worn cargo pants, a faded Clean Horizons t-shirt, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She'd been messaging with her team since they landed, coordinating supplies, checking on equipment, reviewing the village leadership contacts. "First time in Kenya?" asked James, their driver and Elena's local coordinator. He was a Kenyan engineer in his 30s who'd been working with Clean Horizons for 2 years. "First time in Africa," Alexander admitted. James grinned. "You picked a good introduction. Wait until you meet the villages. The people there, they'll change your life." Alexander caught Elena's eye. She was watching him with an expression he was starting to recognize, assessing, hopeful, a little worried, wondering if he'd live up to this, or if he'd disappoint her like everyone else with money probably had. "Here we are," James announced as they crested a hill. The village spread out below them, maybe 50 structures, most of them small homes made of mud brick and corrugated metal. Children played in the dusty central area, women carried water containers on their heads, a few men sat in the shade of a large acacia tree, chickens and goats wandered freely. It was beautiful and heartbreaking all at once. As their vehicle approached, children started running toward them, shouting and laughing. Elena's face lit up with pure joy. "Elena! Elena!" The children swarmed the Land Rover the moment it stopped. Elena jumped out and was immediately surrounded, hugging children, laughing, speaking in what Alexander realized was surprisingly good Swahili. The children touched her hair, her clothes, held her hands, all talking at once. Alexander stepped out more slowly, and the children's attention swung to him. They stared with open curiosity at this tall stranger in his expensive hiking boots. "Jambo," Alexander tried, which exhausted about half of his Swahili vocabulary. The children giggled. A little girl, maybe 5 years old, reached out and touched his arm, then ran away laughing. "They're not used to seeing people who look like they walked out of a safari catalog," Elena said, grinning at him. "The boots are a bit much." "They're practical," Alexander protested. "They're $400 Zamberlands that have never seen actual dirt before today." Elena shot back, but she was smiling. "Come on, let me introduce you to Grace." Grace was Amara's mother, a woman in her early 30s with kind eyes and a backbone of steel. She welcomed them in English, she'd learned it in school, Elena explained, and invited them to her home. The home was a single room, maybe 12 by 12 feet, with a dirt floor, a few pieces of furniture, and a small cooking area. This was where Grace raised 3 children. This was where Amara slept, ate, studied, dreamed. Alexander thought of his penthouse apartment, his 4,000 square feet of marble and glass that he barely used. He felt something twist in his chest. "Amara," Grace called, and the little girl Alexander had seen in the photograph appeared in the doorway. She was bigger than in the picture, 7 now, wearing a school uniform that was slightly too big for her, probably a hand-me-down. Her eyes were still huge and bright, and when she saw Elena, her face transformed with joy. "Miss Elena!" She ran and hugged Elena fiercely. "Amara, look how tall you've gotten." Elena lifted her up, spinning her around. "And you're in school, uniform and everything." "I'm in primary 2 now," Amara said proudly, "and I can read English." "Can you? Show me." Amara ran to get a book, a worn copy of a children's reader, and began reading aloud in careful, deliberate English. Her mother watched with pride that made Alexander's throat tight. This little girl, who 18 months ago had been dying from contaminated water, was now reading English in a school uniform because Elena and her team had installed a $3,000 water system. $3,000. Alexander spent that on wine at business dinners, on ties, on things that didn't matter. "Amara," Elena said gently, "I want you to meet someone. This is Mr. Alexander. He's going to help us bring clean water to other villages, just like we did for yours." Amara looked at Alexander with those enormous eyes and extended a small hand. "Thank you for helping, Mr. Alexander." Alexander shook her hand carefully, this tiny hand that held such enormous dreams. "You're welcome, Amara, and please just call me Alexander." "Do you want to see our water pump?" she asked. "It's very good. We don't get sick anymore." "I would love to see it," and meant it. Alexander grabbed his hand, just took it like it was the most natural thing in the world, and pulled him outside. Elena followed, her eyes suspiciously bright. The water purification system was at the edge of the village, a solar-powered setup that drew water from a protected well, filtered it, and dispensed it through a communal tap. A group of women were there filling containers, chatting and laughing. It was simple, functional, unimpressive to look at. It had saved this village. "We had 37 cases of waterborne illness last year before the system," James explained, pulling up data on his tablet. "This year, 3, all minor. School attendance up 64%. Child mortality down to 0. We haven't lost a single child to water-related illness since installation." "0, Alexander repeated quietly. "0, Elena confirmed. "That's what clean water means, Alexander. It means Amara gets to grow up, gets to go to school, gets to become the doctor she wants to be." Alexander looked at the simple pump, the solar panels, the smiling women filling their containers with water that wouldn't kill their children. He thought about Crosstech Tower, about his office with the Rothko and the Basquiat, about his empire of glass and steel. None of it had ever saved a single life. "Where do we start?" he asked. Elena's smile was radiant. "We start by getting your hands dirty." Over the next 3 days, Alexander Cross, billionaire, tech mogul, man who hadn't done manual labor since his college days, learned what real work felt like. They worked in the second village, a settlement called Kipamba, installing a new water purification system from scratch. It meant digging trenches for pipes and soil that was either rock hard or sandy enough to collapse. It meant hauling equipment in the brutal sun. It meant assembling components while villagers watched and children helped by handing them the wrong tools and asking endless questions. Alexander's expensive clothes became stained with dirt and sweat. His hands developed blisters, then calluses. His back ached from labor he wasn't used to. He discovered muscles he'd forgotten he had. And he'd never felt more alive. Elena worked beside him, patient when he made mistakes, encouraging when he got frustrated, laughing when he dropped something or tripped over a pipe. She showed him how to properly dig a trench, how to seal connections, how to test the pressure system. She introduced him to every villager by name, made sure he understood their stories, their struggles, their hopes. On the second day, as they worked under a makeshift canopy to escape the midday heat, Alexander paused to drink water and watched Elena explaining something to a group of local women who would maintain the system. She was animated, passionate, using her hands to gesture, switching seamlessly between English and Swahili. The women listened intently, asked questions, laughed at something Elena said. "She's amazing, isn't she?" James said, following Elena's gaze. "She really is," Alexander agreed. "When she first came here 3 years ago, I thought she was crazy," he admitted. "This young American woman with big dreams and no money, thinking she could make a difference. But she just kept showing up, kept working, kept believing it mattered. And now," he gestured at the water system they were installing, "now we've brought clean water to 47 villages, saved hundreds of lives, and it's all because she wouldn't give up." "She's stubborn," Alexander said. "She's determined," James corrected. "There's a difference. Stubborn is about ego. Determination is about purpose. Elena has more purpose in her little finger than most people have in their whole body." Alexander watched Elena laugh at something one of the women said, saw the way the villagers responded to her, with respect, with affection, with trust. She belonged here in a way he'd never belonged anywhere, not even in his own empire. "You care about her," James observed. "I barely know her," Alexander said automatically. James just smiled. "Knowing and caring are different things too. You can know someone for years and not care,
Or you can know someone for days and care very much. He clapped Alexander on the shoulder. Come on, this pipe won't install itself. That evening, after the work was done, the village held a celebration. They'd slaughtered a goat, which Elena quietly told Alexander was a huge honor given how valuable livestock was, and the women had prepared ugali and sukuma wiki and other dishes Alexander had never tasted. They sat in a circle around a fire, eating and talking and laughing. Alexander found himself between Amara, who had insisted on sitting next to Mr. Alexander, and an elder named Joseph who spoke broken English but had an infectious laugh. "You are Elena's husband?" asked Joseph. "No," Alexander said quickly, then felt oddly disappointed by how quickly he had said it. "We're business partners. I'm helping fund her work." "Ah, you have money," Joseph nodded wisely. "Money is good, but this," he gestured at the village, the people, the celebration, "this is better. We have little money, but we have much life." Across the fire, Elena was teaching a group of children some kind of clapping game, laughing when they went faster than she could keep up. The firelight caught in her hair, played across her face. She looked radiant, happy, home. Alexander thought about his penthouse, his private jet, his tower of glass and steel, all the things he thought mattered. Joseph was right. This was better. Later, as the celebration wound down and the children were collected by tired mothers, Elena found Alexander sitting alone at the edge of the firelight, staring up at the stars. The Kenyan sun was overwhelming. So many stars, no light pollution to dim them. The Milky Way, a river of light across the darkness. "You okay?" Elena asked, sitting down beside him. "Your stars are better than my stars," Alexander said. Elena laughed. "Your stars? In New York, you can barely see stars, light pollution. Here," he gestured at the overwhelming display above them, "here you can see everything." "One of my favorite things about this work," Elena said softly. "The stars, the silence, the simplicity." They sat quietly for a moment, shoulder to shoulder, watching the stars. "Thank you," Alexander said finally. "For what?" "For bringing me here, for showing me this." He gestured at the sleeping village, the life they'd touched, the difference they were making. "I needed this." "I know," Elena said simply. "How did you know?" "Because I recognized the look in your eyes," she said. "The same look I had 3 years ago before I started this work. Like you'd achieved everything you were supposed to achieve and discovered it didn't matter. Like you were successful but empty. Like you needed to remember why any of it mattered in the first place." Alexander looked at her, this woman who'd crashed into his carefully controlled life and turned everything upside down. "And did I remember?" Elena smiled. "I watched you today with Amara, listened to you explaining to the children how the filtration system works, saw you actually happy."
The flight back to Kenya was the longest 16 hours of Alexander's life. Not because of the distance, but because every minute was another minute Elena had to build her walls higher. Another minute for her to convince herself that he was exactly what she'd feared. A billionaire playing at caring. A man who'd always choose his empire over everything else. Rachel had tried to talk him out of it. "Alexander, the board is already watching you like a hawk. If you disappear again, then they'll do what they're going to do," Alexander had interrupted. "I'm done making decisions based on fear of what I might lose. I need to start making decisions based on what I can't afford to lose." "And that's Elena? That's Elena? That's this work? That's the person I want to be instead of the person I've been." He'd looked at Rachel, this woman who'd been his right hand for 12 years. "I've spent 15 years building an empire and it hasn't made me happy. These 3 days in Kenya, working with Elena, actually making a difference, those were the happiest days I've had in years, maybe ever." Rachel had sighed. "You know I support you, but Alexander, you need to be realistic. The board isn't going to tolerate another absence. Marcus Ashford is circling like a shark. If you do this, you might lose Crosstech." "I know. And you're willing to risk that?" Alexander had thought about Elena's face when he told her he was leaving, the way her walls had slammed up, the way she'd looked at him like he was just another person who'd let her down. "Yes," he'd said firmly, "I'm willing to risk it, because losing Crosstech would hurt, but losing Elena, that would destroy me." Now, as the plane descended into Nairobi, Alexander felt his stomach twist with nerves. What if Elena wouldn't see him? What if she'd meant it when she'd said she couldn't be someone's second choice? What if he'd already ruined the best thing that had ever happened to him? He'd find out soon enough. James was waiting at the airport, looking surprised when he saw Alexander coming through arrivals. "Mr. Cross, I thought you went back to New York." "I did. Now I'm back." Alexander threw his bag into the Land Rover. "Where's Elena?" "She's at a village about 2 hours north. We're doing preliminary assessment for the next installation site." James studied Alexander's face. "Does she know you're coming?" "No." "Probably a good idea to surprise her. She's been difficult since you left." Alexander's heart clenched. "Difficult how?" "Working too hard, not sleeping enough, snapping at people, very focused on the work and not talking about anything else." James started the engine. "You hurt her." "I know." "Good. as long as you know. James pulled out of the airport. So what's your plan? Honestly, I have no idea. Grovel, probably, apologize, try to convince her I'm serious about this. Are you serious? Alexander looked out at the Kenyan landscape rolling past, so different from New York, from these world of glass towers and corporate meetings. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. James nodded, satisfied. Then you might have a chance. Elena's stubborn and she's hurt, but she's not unfair. If you can prove you mean it, she'll listen. How do I prove it? That's the question, isn't it? James smiled. But I think you already know the answer. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. They drove into impanable silence for a while, the landscape growing more rural, more beautiful. Alexander watched villages pass by, children playing in dusty streets, women carrying water containers, men working in fields. This was Elena's world. This was where she belonged. Could he belong here too? Could he build a bridge between this and his empire? Or would he have to choose one over the other? His phone buzzed. Rachel. Board called emergency meeting for Monday. They found out you're back in Kenya. Marcus is pushing for a vote to remove you as CEO. You need to get back here, now. Alexander stared at the message. Monday was 4 days away. 4 days to convince Elena to give him another chance. 4 days to prove he could be the man she needed him to be. 4 days before he might lose everything. He typed back, I'll be there Monday morning, not before. Rachel's response was immediate. Alexander, you could lose the company. I know, he typed. Some things are more important. He turned off his phone. Bad news? James asked. The board wants to fire me. James whistled low. And you're still here? I'm still here, Alexander confirmed. Because if I leave now, I'll lose Elena, and I've already figured out which loss I can't survive. James grinned. She's going to like hearing that, if she'll listen long enough to hear it. They found Elena at a village called Marimba, conducting interviews with community leaders about their water sources.
She was wearing the same faded Clean Horizons t-shirt, her hair pulled back, completely focused on the notebook in front of her as she talked with an elderly woman through a translator. Alexander stood at the edge of the gathering, just watching her work. She was in her element here, confident, compassionate, thorough. She asked questions that showed she cared about more than just the technical details. She wanted to know about the children, about health impacts, about how water scarcity affected their daily lives. This was why he'd fallen for her. Not just her beauty or her passion, but her genuine commitment to seeing people as people, not statistics or problems to solve. The interview concluded, and Elena stood, stretching her back. That's when she saw him. Her entire body went rigid. He watched emotions flash across her face. Surprise, hope, anger, hurt. Then her walls slammed up, and her expression went carefully neutral. She said something to her team, then walked over to where Alexander stood, her arms crossed defensively. What are you doing here? Her voice was flat. I came back, Alexander said simply. I can see that. Why? Because I made a mistake. Because I chose wrong. He took a breath. Because I can't stop thinking about you. And I couldn't stay in New York knowing I'd hurt you. Elena's jaw tightened. So you came back to make yourself feel better? To ease your guilt? No. I came back to prove you wrong. That surprised her. Wrong about what? Wrong about me. About whether I'm serious about this work. About you. About changing who I am. Alexander took a step closer. You said actions matter more than words. So I'm here to show you, not tell you. Your board meeting? I handled it. I kept my position. Barely. He pulled out his phone, showed her the messages from Rachel. And now they're trying to fire me because I came back here instead of staying in New York to defend my empire. Elena read the messages, her expression unreadable. You could lose everything you've built. I know. 15 years of work, billions of dollars, your entire life. I know. And you're still here? I'm still here, Alexander said firmly. Because you were right, Elena. I've spent 15 years building an empire that doesn't matter. 3 days working with you showed me what actually matters, and I'm not going to lose that again. Elena was quiet for a long moment. Words, Alexander. These are just words. You said you'd come back before. You said you cared. And then the first time your empire called, you ran back to it. The accusation stung because it was true. You're right, Alexander admitted. I did. I chose my empire over you, over this, and it was the biggest mistake of my life. But I'm not asking you to just take my word for it now. I'm asking you to let me prove it. How? Give me until Monday. 4 days. Let me work with you.
help you, show you that I'm serious about this, about the work, about the partnership, about," he took a breath, "about us. If I can't prove it in 4 days, if you still don't believe me, plain Monday morning, and you'll never have to see me again." Elena studied him, her dark eyes searching his face. "And if I do believe you, if you prove you're serious, what then? You still have to go back to New York Monday. You still have a board trying to fire you, an empire to manage, a life that's completely incompatible with mine. Then we'll figure it out," Alexander said, "together. But Elena, I can't figure out anything if you won't give me a chance to try." She looked away, across the village, at the work waiting to be done. Alexander could see her fighting with herself, her heart wanting to believe him, her mind protecting her from being hurt again. "4 days, she said finally, turning back to him. "But I'm not going easy on you. You want to prove you're serious about this work? Then you work. Really work. No special treatment, no billionaire privileges. You do what I do, when I do it, how I do it." "Deal," Alexander said immediately. "And at the end of 4 days, I decide, not you, me, whether this," he gestured between them, "has a chance, or whether you get on that plane and we go back to a strictly professional partnership." "Deal," Alexander repeated. Elena nodded once, crisp and businesslike. "Good. Then grab a surveying kit from the Land Rover. We're mapping water sources for the next 2 hours." As Alexander turned to get the equipment, he heard James whisper to Elena, "You're going to make him suffer, aren't you?" Elena's response was too quiet for Alexander to hear, but James's laugh told him everything he needed to know. He was going to earn this, every second of it, and he wouldn't have it any other way. The next 4 days were the hardest work of Alexander's life, not because the physical labor was difficult, though it was, but because Elena was determined to test him in every way possible.
She had him digging pit latrines in the scorching sun, hauling 50-pound bags of cement across rough terrain, conducting door-to-door health surveys at dawn, teaching basic hygiene practices to groups of children who barely spoke English, troubleshooting pump failures, fixing pipes, cleaning filters clogged with mud. Every task she gave him was essential work, nothing frivolous or make-work, but she was definitely testing his commitment, his willingness to do the unglamorous, exhausting, frustrating parts of the job. Alexander didn't complain once. On the second day, they worked installing a new water system in brutal heat. Alexander was shoulder-deep in a trench, covered in mud and sweat, when Elena called down to him. "You missed a spot. That connection isn't sealed properly." Alexander looked at the connection he'd just spent 20 minutes working on. It looked fine to him. "Are you sure?" "Am I sure?" Elena's eyebrow went up. "Did you just question my expertise?" "No, Alexander caught the gleam in her eye and realized she was testing him again. "You're right, I'll fix it." He spent another 30 minutes redoing the connection. When he climbed out of the trench, Elena examined his work, then nodded. "Better." "Was it actually wrong the first time?" Alexander asked. Elena's smile was small but genuine. "Maybe, maybe not, but you didn't argue with me, didn't pull him rank, didn't act like you knew better. You just did the work." "I'm here to learn," Alexander said, "and to prove myself, not to act like I know what I'm doing." Something shifted in Elena's expression. The walls came down, just a fraction. "You're doing better than I expected." "Better than you hoped?" Alexander asked. "That remains to be seen," Elena said, but she was almost smiling. That night, after another village celebration, this community was grateful for the preliminary work they'd done. Alexander found Elena sitting alone by a small fire, reviewing notes from the day. "Can I join you?" he asked. Elena looked up, then gestured to the space beside her. "Free country." Alexander sat, close enough to feel her warmth, but not touching. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the fire. "Tell me about your mother," Elena said suddenly. Alexander was surprised by the question. "What do you want to know?" "E said she had a heart attack, that you built your empire so you'd never be powerless again, but you bought her a house and you don't visit. Why?" The question hit a nerve. "Because I don't know how to talk to her anymore," Alexander admitted. "She's proud of what I've accomplished, but I think she's also disappointed in who I became. She didn't raise me to chase money. She raised me to help people, to use my gifts to make the world better. And somewhere along the way, I forgot that." "Have you told her that you're trying to change?" "No." "Why not?" Alexander thought about it. "Because I was afraid she wouldn't believe me, afraid I'd disappoint her again." Elena was quiet for a moment. "Call her." "What?" "Call your mother, right now. Tell her what you're doing here. Tell her about the work, about the villages, about the children you're helping.
Let her see that you haven't forgotten what she taught you. Elena, do it, Elena said firmly. Because if you can't be honest with your mother about why you're here and what you're trying to do, then you're not doing this for the right reasons. You're just running from one thing to another. Alexander pulled out his phone, stared at it for a long moment, then dialed his mother's number. She answered on the third ring. Alexander, sweetheart, is everything okay? You never call in the middle of the night. I'm not in New York, Mom. I'm in Kenya, and I needed to tell you something. He told her everything. About Elena, about the water projects, about the villages and the children, and the work that actually mattered. About how he'd forgotten what she taught him about using his gifts to help people, and how he was trying to remember. His mother was quiet for a long time when he finished. Then she said, her voice thick with emotion, "Oh, Alexander, I've been waiting 15 years for you to find your way back." Back to what? To yourself. To the boy who used to talk about changing the world, before the world convinced you that success and change were the same thing. She paused. Is she there, this Elena? Alexander glanced at Elena, who was pretending not to listen, but clearly was. Yes. Put her on. Mom. Alexander, put her on the phone. Alexander handed his phone to Elena, who looked panicked. She wants to talk to you. Elena took the phone gingerly. Hello, Mrs. Cross. Alexander couldn't hear his mother's side of the conversation, but he watched Elena's face transform. Surprise, then warmth, then something that looked like tears. Thank you, Elena said softly. That means a lot. Yes, I'll try.
I will. Here, I'll give you back to him. She handed the phone back to Alexander, her eyes bright. Mom? I like her, his mother said simply. Don't let this one go, Alexander. She sees you, the real you, not the empire you built. That's rare. That's precious. I know. And Alexander, I'm proud of you. Not for the billions or the success, but for this. For choosing to do something that matters. Finally. After he hung up, Alexander and Elena sat in silence, both processing the conversation. What did she say to you? Alexander asked. She said, thank you for reminding her son that he has a heart. Elena wiped her eyes. And she told me not to let you off easy, that you need someone who'll challenge you to be better. She's not wrong, Alexander said. No, Elena agreed. And this time when she looked at him, her walls were down. Really down. She's not. Elena? I'm still scared, Elena interrupted. Scared that this is temporary. Scared that when you go back to New York, you'll remember all the reasons your empire matters more than this. Scared that I'm falling for someone who's going to break my heart. I'm scared too, Alexander admitted. Scared that I'll mess this up. Scared that I'll disappoint you, disappoint myself. Scared that I'm not capable of being the person you deserve. He turned to face her fully. But I'd rather be scared and try than be safe and always wonder what could have been. Elena looked at him for a long moment, then leaned in and kissed him. It was soft and sweet, and full of the hope they were both afraid to fully embrace. 2 more days, she whispered against his lips. I will, Alexander promised. I'll prove it. On the 4th day, they finished the water system installation at Marimba. It was back-breaking work, the final push to get everything connected, tested, and operational. Alexander worked alongside Elena and her team for 14 hours straight, barely stopping to eat or drink. When the pump finally kicked on and clean water flowed through the tap for the first time, the villagers erupted in celebration. Children danced, women ululated, men shook Alexander's hand and Elena's, thanking them in Swahili and broken English. Alexander stood back, watching Elena in the center of it all, and felt something settle in his chest. This was it. This was what he'd been missing. This feeling of accomplishment that wasn't measured in stock prices or profit margins, but in the joy on a child's face drinking clean water for the first time. That evening, their last evening before he had to leave for New York and the board meeting that would determine his future, Elena found Alexander sitting alone at the edge of the village. 4 days are up, she said, sitting beside him. Yeah, Alexander said. They are. You worked hard, didn't complain, didn't ask for special treatment, actually listened when people tried to teach you things. Elena paused. Your blisters have blisters. Alexander looked at his hands, rough, calloused, sore. Yeah. Why didn't you wear gloves? I offered you gloves. Because you don't wear gloves, Alexander said simply. Elena was quiet for a moment. You're kind of an idiot, you know that?
I've been told. But you're my kind of idiot, Elena said softly, and when Alexander looked at her, she was crying. I believe you, Alexander. I believe you're serious about this. About the work, changing, about us. Alexander felt his chest expand with hope and relief and love. Yeah? Yeah. Elena wiped her eyes. But I need you to understand something. This isn't going to be easy. We're still from different worlds. You're still a billionaire with an empire to run, and I'm still a nonprofit director who makes $47,000 a year. We're going to fight. We're going to struggle. There are going to be times when your world and my world clash, and we have to figure out how to navigate that. I know, Alexander said. And I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me that if it comes down to a choice, if you have to choose between your empire and this, between your old life and building something new, promise me you'll choose what matters. Not what's easy or safe or expected, but what actually matters. Alexander took her hands in his, calloused palm against calloused palm. I promise. And Elena, I need you to promise me something too. What? Yeah. Elena wiped her eyes. But I need you to understand something. This isn't going to be easy. We're still from different worlds. You're still a billionaire with an empire to run, and I'm still a nonprofit director who makes $47,000 a year. We're going to fight. We're going to struggle. There are going to be times when your world and my world clash, and we have to figure out how to navigate that. I know, Alexander said. And I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me that if it comes down to a choice, if you have to choose between your empire and this, between your old life and building something new, promise me you'll choose what matters. Not what's easy or safe or expected, but what actually matters. Alexander took her hands in his, calloused palm against calloused palm. I promise. And Elena, I need you to promise me something too. What? Promise me that you won't let fear make you push me away. That when things get hard, and they will get hard, you won't assume the worst of me. That you'll give me the chance to prove, again and again, that I choose you, that I choose this. Elena's tears fell freely now. I promise. They kissed as the sun set over the Kenyan landscape, two people from impossibly different worlds, choosing to build something together, despite all the reasons it shouldn't work. I have to leave in the morning, Alexander said when they finally broke apart.
I know. The board meeting is Monday. They're probably going to try to remove me as CEO. I know. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I'll still have Crosstech after this. I don't know what my life is going to look like. Elena cupped his face in her hands. Then we'll figure it out, together. Whatever happens, we'll figure it out. I love you, Alexander said, the words surprising him even as he said them, but they were true, completely, utterly true. I know it's fast and crazy and probably not smart to say it after less than 2 weeks, but I love you, Elena Rivera. Elena laughed through her tears. It is fast and crazy, and definitely not smart. She kissed him. And I love you too, Alexander Cross. God help me, I love you too. They held each other under the African stars, both of them knowing that the real test was about to begin, that love was the easy part, and making love work across their two worlds would be the challenge. But they were willing to try. Together, they were willing to try. The board meeting on Monday was everything Alexander expected, and worse. He'd flown back to New York on Sunday, spent a sleepless night preparing, and walked into the Crosstech conference room Monday morning to face a hostile board and a smug Marcus Ashford attending via video conference. Mr. Cross, the board chair, Patricia Kendrick, began coldly. We're here to discuss your recent behavior and determine whether you're still fit to lead this company. For 3 hours, they grilled him about his trips to Kenya, about the time away from the company, about his erratic behavior and loss of focus. Marcus Ashford hammered him about the Singapore deal he'd allegedly abandoned and the stock price fluctuations caused by rumors of instability in leadership. Alexander defended himself, but honestly,
calmly. Yes, he'd been in Kenya. Yes, he'd been working on humanitarian projects. Yes, he'd been reevaluating his priorities. And do you think that's appropriate for a CEO? Patricia demanded. To abandon your responsibilities for what? A charity project? A personal crisis? I think it's not only appropriate, it's essential, Alexander said firmly. Crosstech has spent 15 years focused solely on profit and growth. We've been successful by every financial metric, but we've lost sight of purpose, of impact, of building technology that actually improves people's lives instead of just generating revenue. Our shareholders don't invest in purpose, Marcus interjected smoothly. They invest in returns, and your recent behavior has cost them millions in stock value. Short-term fluctuation, Alexander countered. And if our shareholders are only interested in quarterly profits and not long-term sustainability and impact, then maybe they're investing in the wrong company. The room went silent. You didn't tell shareholders they were wrong. You didn't suggest that maybe money wasn't the only thing that mattered. Mr. Cross, Patricia said carefully, are you saying you intend to shift Crosstech's focus away from profitability? I'm saying I intend to shift Crosstech's focus towards sustainable profitability that's coupled with genuine social impact. I'm saying I want Crosstech to be a company that makes money and makes a difference. And I'm saying that the humanitarian water filtration project with Clean Horizons is just the beginning. The beginning of what? Another board member asked. Alexander stood, pulling up a presentation he'd worked on during the flight. The beginning of Crosstech 2.0, a company that doesn't just build technology for the wealthy, but builds solutions for everyone, that measures success not just in revenue, but in lives changed, that attracts the best talent not because we pay the most, but because we do work that matters. He walked them through his vision, expanding the water filtration project globally, developing affordable healthcare technology for underserved communities, building educational tools for schools in developing countries, partnerships with NGOs and governments to address real problems instead of just creating luxury products for people who already had everything. We can do this while maintaining profitability, Alexander argued. In fact, I believe we'll be more profitable in the long run because we'll build customer loyalty, attract passionate employees, and position ourselves as leaders in socially responsible technology. But more importantly, we'll actually matter. We'll build something worth being proud of. The board members looked at each other. Marcus Ashford was frowning. And if we disagree, Patricia asked, if we think this vision is too risky, too idealistic, too divorced from our core business? Alexander took a breath. This was it, the moment of truth. Then I'll resign as CEO, he said clearly. I won't lead a company that only cares about profit.
I won't spend the rest of my life building an empire that doesn't matter. So you have a choice. Support this vision or find a new CEO who will give you what you want. But you can't have both. You can't have me leading Crosstech down the same path we've been on. The ultimatum hung in the air. Patricia called for a recess, and Alexander was escorted to a private office to wait. His phone buzzed. Elena. How's it going? Either really well or really badly. I gave them an ultimatum. Tell me. He called her, needing to hear her voice. She answered immediately. I told them I want to transform Crosstech into a socially responsible company that actually makes a difference. And if they don't support that vision, I'll resign. Elena was quiet. You are willing to walk away from Crosstech? I'm willing to walk away from being CEO of a company that doesn't matter, Alexander clarified. But Elena, Crosstech is my company. I built it from nothing. If the board removes me, I still have enough stock to influence its direction. And if they really want me gone, I can start something new, something that embodies this vision from the ground up. You've thought about this. I've thought about nothing else since I left Kenya, since you asked me to promise I'd choose what matters. He paused. This matters. Building something meaningful matters. And even if the board says no, even if I lose Crosstech, I won't lose myself again. I won't go back to building empires that have no purpose. I'm proud of you, Elena said softly. Win or lose? Win or lose. You stood up for what you believe in. That takes courage. I learned from the best, Alexander said. A woman who crashes billionaire parties to fight for children she's never met, who builds water systems in impossible conditions because she believes every life matters, who taught me what it means to actually care about something beyond yourself. Stop, Elena said, but he could hear she was crying. You're gonna make me cry and I'm in the middle of a village meeting. Tell them it's allergies. Elena laughed through her tears. I love you, you know that. I love you too. And Elena, whatever happens today, I'm not done fighting. For this vision, for us, for a future that actually matters. I know. That's why I love you. After they hung up, Alexander sat alone in the office, looking out at New York, his city, his empire, everything he'd built.
And for the first time, he felt at peace with the possibility of losing it, because he'd found something more valuable than empire. He'd found purpose. He'd found love. He'd found himself. Whatever the board decided, he was going to be okay. Rachel knocked on the door. "They're ready for you." Alexander stood, straightened his tie, and walked back into the conference room. The board members' faces were unreadable. Patricia stood. "Mr. Cross, we've discussed your proposal and your ultimatum, and we've reached a decision." Alexander waited, his heart steady. "Your vision is radical, risky, a significant departure from our current business model." Patricia paused. "It's also exactly what CrossTech needs." Alexander's breath caught. "We've spent 15 years building a profitable company with no soul," Patricia continued. "And frankly, some of us have been waiting for you to remember why you started this company in the first place. To remember that you're brilliant not just at making money, but at solving problems that matter." She looked around at the other board members who were nodding. "We're going to support your vision, Alexander, with conditions. You'll report quarterly on both financial performance and social impact metrics. You'll maintain profitability while pursuing these humanitarian initiatives. And you'll bring in a chief impact officer to help ensure these programs are actually effective and not just good PR." Alexander felt relief wash over him. "I accept those conditions, all of them. However," Patricia continued, "we're removing Marcus Ashford from this board. His repeated attempts to undermine your leadership and his focus solely on short-term stock manipulation rather than long-term company health are incompatible with our vision for CrossTech moving forward." On the video screen, Marcus's face went red. "You can't." "We just did," Patricia said calmly. "This meeting is adjourned." The screen went dark on Marcus's furious face. After the other board members filed out, Patricia stayed behind. "That woman in Kenya," she said. "Elena Rivera. She's the reason for all this, isn't she?" Alexander smiled. "She's the catalyst. But the potential was always there. I'd just forgotten it existed. Bring her to New York," Patricia said. "I'd like to meet the person who reminded Alexander Cross that he's human. I'll ask her. But fair warning, she's not easily impressed by billionaires or board members." Patricia laughed. "Good. We could use more of that around here."
She extended her hand. "Welcome back, Alexander. The real Alexander. We've missed him." Alexander left CrossTech Tower feeling lighter than he had in 15 years. He'd won. The board supported his vision. CrossTech was going to become something that mattered. But more importantly, he'd proven something to himself, that he could stand up for what he believed in, that he could choose purpose over profit, meaning over money, love over empire. He called Elena from the car. "How did it go?" she asked immediately. They said yes to all of it. CrossTech is going to transform into a socially responsible company focused on meaningful impact alongside profitability. Elena's squeal of joy made him laugh. "Alexander, that's amazing! I'm so proud of you." "There's more," Alexander said. "I want you to be the Chief Impact Officer. I want you to help guide CrossTech's humanitarian initiatives, make sure we're actually making a difference and not just doing good PR. You'd have a real budget, real resources, and the authority to make sure we do this right." Elena was quiet for a long moment. "Alexander, I can't leave Clean Horizons. It's my organization, my life's work." "You wouldn't have to leave it," Alexander interrupted. "Clean Horizons would become CrossTech's primary humanitarian partner. We'd fund your work, expand your capacity, help you scale globally. You'd run both, Clean Horizons as an independent organization and CrossTech's impact division as part of the company. It's a lot of work, but it means we could actually change the world," Elena finished, her voice full of wonder. "Not just save one village at a time, but build systems that save millions." "Exactly. And we'd be working together in the same city. Well, some of the time. You'd still need to be in the field, and I'd join you as often as I could. But yes, we'd be based in the same city. We could actually build a life together instead of just stealing moments between flights." "Alexander Cross, are you asking me to move to New York?" "I'm asking you to build something with me. In New York, in Kenya, everywhere in between. A partnership that's professional and personal. An empire that actually matters." He paused. "I'm asking you to take a chance on us." "I already took a chance on us," Elena said softly. "In Kenya, under the stars, when I chose to believe you, when I chose to love you. And yes, yes to all of it. To the job, to New York, to building this together. To us." Alexander felt joy burst through his chest like sunlight. Yeah. But Alexander, I need you to understand something. I'm not going to become someone I'm not just because I'm moving to New York. I'm still going to wear cargo pants and work in the field, and probably embarrass you at fancy corporate events. "I'm counting on it," Alexander said. "I don't want you to change. I want you to help me change. Help CrossTech change. Help the world change.
We're really doing this, aren't we? Elena said, and he could hear the smile in her voice. A billionaire and a nonprofit director, building an empire with a heart. We're really doing this, Alexander confirmed. Together, Elena echoed. I love you, Alexander Cross. I love you too, Elena Rivera. Now come home. Our adventure is just beginning. 6 months later, Alexander stood on a stage at Crosstech's annual shareholder meeting. But this year was different. This year, Elena stood beside him. 6 months ago, Alexander began. I told you we were going to transform Crosstech into a company that makes a difference. Today, I'm here to show you what that looks like. The screen behind them came to life with images from the field: water systems in Kenya, educational technology in India, healthcare tools in Bolivia, children's faces, village celebrations. Lives changed. Thanks to our partnership with Clean Horizons, led by our Chief Impact Officer, Elena Rivera, Alexander continued, gesturing to Elena, who stepped forward. We've brought clean water to 287,000 people in 12 countries. We've reduced waterborne illness by an average of 81% in the communities we serve. We've saved an estimated 2,300 lives. The shareholders were silent, watching the images. And yes, Alexander said, this work cost money. We invested $47 million in humanitarian projects this year. Some of you questioned whether that was a wise use of resources. He pulled up a new slide, financial results. Our revenue is up 23% year over year. Our stock price has increased 34%. We've attracted the top talent in the industry, with applications up 340%. And customer loyalty and brand value have reached all-time highs. Alexander paused. Because it turns out that when you build a company that actually matters, people want to be part of it. Employees want to work for it. Customers want to support it. Investors want to own it. The room erupted in applause. Elena took the microphone.
But the real measure of our success isn't in these numbers, she said, pulling up a photo of Amara, now 8 years old, in her school uniform. It's in this little girl, who has clean water and dreams of becoming a doctor. It's in the 287,000 people who no longer have to choose between contaminated water and no water. It's in the villages transformed, the lives saved, the futures made possible. She looked out at the shareholders. Thank you for believing in this vision, for understanding that empire and impact aren't opposites, they're partners. That the most valuable thing we can build isn't measured in dollars, but in difference. The applause was thunderous. After the meeting, as they walked through Crosstech Tower toward their offices, they'd insisted on offices next to each other, despite having very different workspace needs. Alexander pulled Elena aside. Remember 6 months ago when you crashed a party in Monaco to yell at a billionaire about water filtration? Elena laughed. I remember you thought I was a crazy person. I thought you were the most terrifying person I'd ever met, Alexander corrected. You looked at me like I could do better, should do better, had to do better. And you were right. He pulled her into a quiet corner, away from the employees and the bustle. You've changed my life, Elena. Changed me. Made me remember what it means to build something that matters. We changed each other, Elena said, wrapping her arms around his neck. You've helped me scale Clean Horizons beyond anything I dreamed possible, given me resources to actually make the kind of impact I've always wanted to make. You've been my partner in every sense of the word. I love you, Alexander said. I love you too, Elena replied, then smiled. Even if you still can't dig a proper trench. I'm getting better. You're really not. Alexander laughed and kissed her, right there in the hallway of Crosstech Tower, not caring who saw, because this was his life now, building an empire with heart alongside the woman who taught him what empire really meant. Not power for power's sake, not wealth for wealth's sake, but building something that changed lives, that made the world better, that meant something beyond the bottom line. An empire built on love and purpose, and the radical belief that business could be a force for good. That evening, they stood on the balcony of Alexander's penthouse, which was slowly becoming their penthouse as Elena's things migrated from her Brooklyn apartment, and looked out at New York spreading below them. Do you miss Kenya? Alexander asked, his arm around his waist. Every day, Elena admitted. But we're going back next month, and the month after that. And honestly, I'm building something here too. Something that lets me help not just one village at a time, but hundreds of villages, thousands. No regrets? About us? About this? Elena turned to face him. Not for a second. Even though I'm still a billionaire who occasionally has to wear a tux to boring corporate events? Even though, Elena confirmed. Although you're a different kind of billionaire now. The kind who gets his hands dirty. The kind who cares about more than stock prices.
the kind who builds empires with hearts. Alexander kissed her, slow and deep and full of promise. When they broke apart, he said, "I have something for you. If it's expensive jewelry, I'm going to be annoyed." Alexander pulled out a small box, and Elena's eyes went wide. "Alexander, it's not what you think," he said quickly, opening the box. Inside was a simple silver ring, modest by billionaire standards, beautiful by any standard. It's a promise. Not an engagement. Not yet, though if you're open to that conversation eventually. I might be, Elena interrupted, smiling. But a promise that I choose you, every day. That I choose us and this life we're building, and the empire we're creating together. A promise that you'll never be second to anything, because you've taught me that love and purpose and impact are what actually matter. Elena's eyes filled with tears. "Put it on me." Alexander slipped the ring onto her finger, and Elena held up her hand, watching it catch the light. "Hearts beyond empires," she said softly. "What?" "That's what we're building, isn't it? Hearts that reach beyond our own empires, beyond ourselves. Love that transforms everything it touches." She looked at him. "That's what you've given me, Alexander. A heart that reaches beyond empire. And I love you for it." "I love you too," Alexander said, pulling her close. "Thank you for crashing my party in Monaco, for yelling at me about water filtration, for seeing the person I could be instead of the person I was." "Thank you for listening," Elena replied, "for changing, for choosing love over empire."
They stood together, watching the city lights, two people from impossible different worlds who'd chosen to build one world together. A world where empire and heart weren't opposites, but partners, where success meant more than money and impact meant more than profit, where love conquered all the reasons it shouldn't work. And somewhere in Kenya, in a village with clean water and bright futures, a little girl named Amara went to sleep dreaming of becoming a doctor, her life saved by two people who'd proven that when hearts reach beyond empires, miracles happen. The end was really just the beginning, and it was beautiful. Thank you for following Alexander and Elena's journey from a chance encounter in Monaco to building an empire with a heart. Their story reminds us that the greatest wealth isn't measured in billions, but in lives changed, love shared, and purpose found. Sometimes the best empires are built not on power and profit, but on hearts that dare to reach beyond themselves. A Hearts Beyond Empires story, YouTube channel production. Build an empire with a heart.